Hey folks, welcome in. Good Saturday evening. Definitely let me know if you can hear me loud and clear in the chat. Make sure the stream's coming through clear and all that good stuff here on in the beginning. So we're gonna get things rolling in about 5 minutes, usual drill. Give a little bit of time for everyone to filter in, all the notifications to go out, and all of that fun stuff. Let me know where you're watching from as well. And let me make sure I don't have to hear myself the entire time. So let me mute that. Awesome. All right. Let's see, what's today's date? We've got the 18th of January. I feel like it was just like the 5th of January when we were breaking down that big storm in the Ohio Valley. But here we are tonight. We're going to talk about big snow in the Northeast and big snow in the Deep South. And when I mean Deep South, I really mean Deep South. We're talking Gulf Coast and the Southeast. But again, let me know where you're watching from. And in a second, I'm going to introduce our special guest tonight who was nice enough to join me and is an absolute whiz on meteorology and is really good at breaking these things down, especially in the Northeast. So if we've got folks watching in the Northeast, let me know. We're going to get into the real nitty gritty of the meteorology here in just a moment, and I'll introduce him once we get there in about, again, a couple of minutes. So just filter in, and also go ahead, like the stream. Let me do my little spiel at the beginning here too and hit this fun button. Go ahead, like the video, subscribe, hit the bell for the latest notifications. Y'all know the drill. Always super grateful for that, and it really helps this video reach more people, helps it get into the algorithm somewhat, and just a fun time in general. So looking forward to tonight. Should be fun. I'm going to talk all sorts of things. I'm going to try to read chat as much as possible. So I guess I can go ahead and do that real quick and start reading some of these things. So, all right, let's see. We got people watching from North Carolina. We got Vermont, Maryland. We've got New Jersey, the great Commonwealth. Y'all call New Jersey Commonwealth? I think Virginia's the Commonwealth. I don't know if maybe every state's a Commonwealth. I don't know. I do the weather, not politics. But South Carolina in here. We got Greensboro, North Carolina, Central New Jersey, Wake Forest, Princeton, New Jersey. Awesome. Love to see it. Love to see it. Folks watching from all over. Jacksonville, Florida. That's going to be a fun city to talk about for sure, I think, as we get on down the road here. Someone says, please tell me Charlotte has a chance. Well, it's kind of like the Jim Carrey meme. So you're telling me there's a chance? There is. There is a chance in Charlotte for snow, and we'll talk about it. Trust me, we will get there. Definitely. We're going to start with the Northeast first, though, because that's coming up tomorrow. And I think that's going to be something that maybe flies under the radar just a little bit. All right, people watching from Maine, Pennsylvania, up near the Canadian border. Awesome. Connecticut, Georgia, or North Carolina, Buffalo. Welcome in from Buffalo. Greenville, South Carolina. Yeah, Jersey is the Garden State. That I did know, Bev. I appreciate that. New York, North Augusta, South Carolina. I've not been to North Augusta, but I've heard many things. Boiling Springs, South Carolina. That's not far from my hometown of Pickens, South Carolina. Central New Jersey, a lot or a little. We'll talk about that, Dan. I think we'll talk about New Jersey. So just stay tuned. We'll get there. Watching from Myrtle Beach, love it. Myrtle Beach, fun city. Love Myrtle Beach. Got plenty of friends down there. Definitely a fun place to be. Chapin, South Carolina, Lumberton, Delaware, Massachusetts, Oak Island, North Carolina, New York. I appreciate that $5 super chat, Florida Skyview. By the way, if y'all have any questions that you want fast tracked, definitely the super chat button is probably the easiest way to do it. Even if it's like $1.99, and we have so many chats coming in, that's the one that kind of pops in my face. So we will definitely answer any questions that are super chat questions for sure. Jersey girl here, love it. Thank you for coming in, Alice. Appreciate it. Little River, South Carolina, not far from Myrtle Beach. Winston-Salem, Chapin, South Carolina, Chapin, Irmo, all those fun suburbs just outside of Columbia. Always one of those areas I find myself driving through when I storm chase down there. So fun stuff, fun stuff. All right, well, we've been going for about 5 minutes. We got about 400 people in here, so let's go ahead and get going. Let me unmute my guest. So I'll go ahead and introduce him really quickly. This is BGWX, who, by the way, has his own YouTube channel. So let me pull it up here. And this is a guy that is super smart. He's from the Northeast. He is really kind of specialized, I would say, in forecasting up there, especially winter storms. He's got about, I think, like 7,000, more than 7,000 followers on Twitter or X. By the way, go ahead, follow him and myself on Twitter if you haven't already. Probably not a terrible idea to keep you up to date as we continue ahead. So I'll go ahead and let you talk a little bit and introduce yourself for a second. Brady, go ahead.
Yeah, welcome everybody. Brady here from BGWX. Absolute pleasure. Gerald, thanks for having me, my man. Fun times this winter, man. Listen, we got a lot. There's a lot to talk about, but yeah, listen, I've grown up always loving the weather, taking meteorology classes before. Don't have a degree. Gerald hyped me up maybe a little bit too much. I considered myself an amateur, but I definitely love this stuff with a passion for sure. And I love breaking down the in-depth stuff and I love being able to simplify it for all you guys. So it's a pleasure to be here, and man, I just got a passion for this stuff. I love it with all my heart, and hoping some of you watching can get some good snow too. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Again, go ahead, check out his YouTube channel. Let's try to get him to 1,000 subscribers out of appreciation for joining us tonight. And trust me, if y'all aren't impressed yet, by the time we start breaking down maps, I'm going to let him do a lot of it for the Northeast. And I think you'll be impressed by then. So everyone go ahead, definitely welcome him in the chat, say hi. And I will go ahead and remind everyone one more little plug now that we've got everyone in at this point. If you haven't already, go ahead and like the stream, subscribe, and hit that bell for the latest notifications. Has been some incredible growth on the channel recently, and we are super excited about it. And with that said, let's go ahead and start talking weather here. Also, Brady, you are unmuted now, so if you want to talk at any point, just jump on in and cut me off.
Fantastic.
So
Yep.
all right, so what we've got looping here, this is the latest Euro model from this evening, just ran. I think it shows that double trouble potential pretty well. We've got snow potential in the Northeast really as soon as tomorrow, so it's not far away at all, folks. We can kind of break down some mesoscale models with that one. And then we've got our southern storm potential by early next week, that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday timeframe from Texas, Louisiana, all the way up through the Carolina coast. And a small outside shot, not a very high chance, but an outside shot that maybe even portions of the Northeast could try to get in on that one if we can get this trough to tilt in the right orientation. That'll be a little tough, but we'll try our best and see if we can get that going. So let's go ahead and move ahead another map here. And I want to show you this, folks. We've been talking about the snow and the cold and the ice. But I do think that the cold is one of the bigger stories with that, including that Arctic air that is moving southbound. So you can see this is our temperature map from the past day or two. You see all of that cold air pushing southward and moving in quite quickly. And that will really kind of set up the stage for that snowy potential as we move on ahead here. So definitely excited to kind of break this down. All right, next map. We'll go ahead now and I will send it over to you, Brady, because this is the map you wanted to talk about. So if you want to go ahead and talk just a tad on this one, and if you want me to draw anything, just let me know.
Yeah, of course. Again, Gerald, you're too nice, hyping me up a little bit. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm not anything special, but I just love this stuff with a passion. And yeah, let's break it down. So, Gerald, if you highlight there in the across from all the way from Texas to off the Atlantic, that boundary, if you can highlight that, that is kind of what's setting up here. This is the initial stages. So we've seen today rain and snow across a lot of the Northeast here and, even parts of the Mid-Atlantic. Mainly rain for a lot of people closer to coastal I-95, and we had some snow into the interior today. But notice the system moves out. And, you're looking at it and you're like, we're a day away from a storm. Where is this forming? Our upper level energy you can see is actually digging all the way down. It's coming across there in the central US. That's going to be moving across to the eastern US. And that boundary that you see there, where you see all that moisture that's starting to flow across, Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, Mississippi, Louisiana, that boundary is actually going to interact with our upper level energy, and that's what's going to create our storm. So, Gerald, if you don't mind switching to 500 millibar vorticity for me, if you don't mind doing that, and you can see that line that stretched out, Gerald, if your pen tool, you can draw it. If you can highlight the boundary for me. Um,
Yep. You want to like where it's at right now?
yeah, yeah, yeah. You can just circle it,
Okay.
and that boundary is going to interact with that big ol' if you see that trough that's digging across, towards New Mexico, Colorado, and you can see those height lines digging, that's suggesting that we're digging a trough here, and that's actually associated with really cold air from our polar vortex. So that polar vortex is digging down. We're seeing a stretching event from the Arctic Circle. So that Arctic air is digging down, and what you're going to see is that's going to meet up eventually with that warmer air and that moisture along that boundary. And it's kind of a unique setup here because we're going to see that boundary be able to interact here with the system. And so those 2 are gonna meet up, and that's gonna create a clash. And actually, Gerald, I'm gonna move you to the 850 millibar temp quickly, just so I can highlight that as
All right.
well. And
Up
if
here,
you
let's
can
look at
look
find.
here at 850 millibar temp, you can see this thermal clash that takes place. You see that deep Arctic cold air mass that's digging down, right? We're about to get into a real ice box here. So it's going to get very cold after this system for a lot of the central and eastern part of the US, maybe some of the coldest temperatures in years for somebody. But this Arctic air mass in place is meeting up, and you can see it very hard to see a little bit, but you can see it in Gerald in the Gulf of Mexico a little bit. You can draw along the Gulf Stream there, and you can kind of see that's where that boundary sets up there. Um, and that cold air meets that warm air, and that is going to get that's those are classic ingredients to create significant winter weather. A fancy term to be called that would be the baroclinic zone, and where we would
Yeah,
see, and that's
I was gonna add in here really quickly, actually. Yeah, because I talk about this all the time on my channel. I use the word baroclinic zone, baroclinic instability, and this is something I just learned about this year with my meteorology courses. And by the way, everyone, we're gonna answer these
yeah,
questions in 1 second. We've got a couple super chats that we're gonna get to, but yeah, basically, this is prime ingredient for a storm to form. I talk about it in the videos. I say you get cold air and warm air. Now, the only thing you need on top of that is some sort of lift, a lifting mechanism of some sort. And Brady was
yeah.
talking about the trough. That trough is the lift. That's what's going to move over this boundary and create that northeast storm. So we'll pause it right here really quickly and let's answer some of these questions. And then, of course, chime in with any of these questions as well, Brady. So Chris put a super chat in. He said, "Do you think it will overperform in Raleigh?" I assume he's talking about the second storm. Chris, it depends on what your definition of perform is. Like, if you're expecting an inch or two, then I do think it could overperform. If you think the storm next week is going to bring a foot or half a foot, then I don't see that being very likely. I think right now, and I haven't made a map yet, I've been kind of keeping away from totals, and we'll talk about this later on why that is, because we've got some pretty crazy model disagreement on the Tuesday storm. I think Raleigh will get snow. I think you'll get a couple of inches. So good question. We have a. Did you want to add anything on that one, Brady? Sorry.
No, yeah, there's lot of interesting things down the line after. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have a super chat from GMWeather supporter. Love that. Somebody made a whole YouTube page just with that. That's kind of funny. Hey, Gerald, will the snow in Southwest Virginia stick? Yeah, it's going to be cold, and this kind of ties back into this boundary we're talking about in that Arctic air I showed you earlier. That's going to funnel in, and that's going to make these snow totals pretty impressive ratio wise, and just the fact that everything's gonna be so cold at the surface, it's gonna be very easy for just about anything to stick. And then we had one more. Did you want to add on that one, Brady? Sorry, I keep forgetting.
No, 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 no. Keep going. You're doing great, Gerald.
Okay. And Paul asks, "Thanks and good luck in your future." Of course, Paul. I don't know what we did yet, but we appreciate that.
Yeah,
And
good luck, Gerald.
yeah,
Absolutely, man.
good luck to you too. So good luck to everybody. Okay. All right. Awesome. So those are a couple questions. And yeah, sorry. Give me 1 second to do something in here. Oh, I can put user in timeout. Let me do that. That's fun. I didn't know I could do that. Okay. All right. You want to stay on this map or you want to go to the next map?
Yeah, no, you can slide back to 500 volt here, and that will kind of
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Also,
Perfect.
Sean said he just put something. Oh god, we've got so many things happening. Sorry, we'll get to the fort in 1 second. I promise. Let me back it up again so people can just kind
Oh,
of
from
see it. I'll pause it there. We'll
Delmarva,
send it.
Sean, awesome. Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you, Sean, from the DMV. We appreciate that. Thank you so much. And then Tune Fully OG says, "Do you think Chattanooga will get snow either storm?" Chattanooga, unfortunately, I hate to say it, is kind of in the screw zone between both storms. You're a little too far for the second storm, and you're a little too far south for the first storm. But do let me know how much snow you got from the storm last week. I'd love to know what Chattanooga got out of that one. So definitely feel free to respond. But just wanted to add that real quick. All right. So do you want me to put it on Sunday afternoon, or is there a specific time frame you want to look at 500?
no, you can keep it. You know, you can keep maneuvering back and forth from Sunday to
Okay.
Monday. Keep going back and
Gotcha.
forth, like, kind of, yeah. Um, And so, yeah, going off where I kind of left off. So, for my people, living in the Northeast, Mid Atlantic, these classic ingredients that I was alluding to, this is kind of what's setting up our storm here. So, if kind of curious what's setting up, you want to know more, why is this happening? This is what's creating the storm here. And so, you can see those two pieces of, the upper level energy there. Those are going to meet, right? That's that boundary that I was talking about, all that convection, all that showers and thunderstorms along the Gulf Coast. That meets up with we call it an upper level low because it's that upper level energy vorticity is what its fancy term is vorticity. That's but really just refer to as upper level energy that meets up, and that is going to be able to take off thanks to the interaction with that boundary, and that moisture from the boundary with that clash of cold air is what's going to set up some pretty intense snowfall rates along this area too, because it's not just regular, this is deep arctic cold air that's going to meet that warm air that's coming up the coast um, and along, off the Carolinas, off the Atlantic, and we're going to tilt that trough negative, meaning we're going to allow the flow to get backed off the Atlantic. When you tilt your trough negative, it allows you to throw all that moisture onto land. So now you're throwing that to be able to meet that cold air, and that clash is going to set up not only just snowfall, but potentially, Jared, if you slide to 700 millibar vorticity for me, if you do me an awesome
Yeah.
favor, so for our people that are living here in the Mid-Atlantic, in the Northeast, you're curious kind of what's setting up. If you look here, you can actually, Gerald, even zoom into the Northeast as well for this one, so you can get a little bit of a closer image. And if you don't mind sliding to 12Z, just to show it a little bit better, it'll just be a little bit clearer on 12Z.
12Z model run?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Or, okay,
Um,
okay, gotcha.
yeah, yeah, perfect. And so what you see here, so we talked about that cold air is going to meet that warm air, and what's going to allow to happen is this process we call frontogenesis. It's a fancy process. Just it's really all it is you think about it, is that lift that we're going to see created above the surface is going to be thanks to those mid-level dynamics clashing. And you can see that area of 700 millibar. You can see all those little pockets there, those are gonna form together here. Those pockets form together, and they're gonna be able to create probably an intense band that sets up across the Mid-Atlantic from all the way from Maryland, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Hudson Valley, New York City, a lot of Connecticut, Massachusetts, Vermont, all of New England is going to pretty much be able, besides maybe southeastern New England that may have to deal with some mixing issues potentially, and maybe eastern Long Island as well. But this band sets up here, and right, this thermal clash we create, there's classic winter weather ingredients that, for me personally, I believe are going to allow for some pretty intense snowfall rates to occur. So you see that band that that Gerald's that shows up there, and you can see it right over at this time, over Central Mass, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and that band sets up there, and it slides east northeast out. And so this is how it sets up here, and so it allows for significant snowfall totals. You always look just to the west or to the north of the 700 millibar signature here, right? You have 500 millibars, and 700 millibars is a little bit lower in the atmosphere. And it's those mid-level dynamics that we start talking about now that really fuel the intense banding, right? And so what allows this process to happen now is, right, that thermal gradient that we create is going to allow for intense snowfall rates, maybe 1, 2, maybe even 3 inch per hour snowfall rates, because it's going to be cold, and there's going to be plenty of lift present in the dendritic growth zone, which is basically just where your snowfall production zone is. And if you, Gerald, can slide to the HRR, kind of those soundings there, that we were displaying. And
Yeah,
you can
totally.
really pick, anywhere maybe in New York or Connecticut, Massachusetts, one of some of the darker blues, whatever you find
I'll take a
doesn't matter.
sounding just so everyone knows. This is the Hudson Valley, and this is for 7 p.m. tomorrow night. Here's your
Yes,
sounding.
yes, and this is a perfect sounding. Display is exactly what I'm highlighting. And we talk about the dendritic growth zone. You see the letters DGZ. That's what it stands for. The dendritic growth zone. That is where your snowfall production zone is in the atmosphere. So typically your average split, then this applies for the south coming up too. If you ever want to look at soundings, you can absolutely do that yourself on any of these model websites for anybody watching. So when you look at this, you see those little bars there, those purple, those orangish, bars that show up. The stronger you see those and the further out they slide, the more the more lift is present there. So, the more juice there is, and so to say, to that part of the atmosphere. And that's a very important part for there to be lift. And we're going to have that present here, which is going to allow intense snowfall rates to take place 1, 2, maybe even 3+ inch per hour rates. And look how cold we are, too. We're 20 degrees at the surface. And that's going to allow for not only for it to be accumulating snow, but in the interior, a fluffier snow as well. Right, so you can see where Gerald's highlighting that lift there. You can see right there in in the dendritic growth zone. That's where we look at. That's the most important spot for lift to be in the atmosphere. And then when that's present, and there's a lot of it, like you see there, the omega, that's just a fancy term. It's not anything special, but you see that minus. Once you start getting around -1, that's typically heavy snow. And you start getting -2 and above, that's very heavy snow. And you're going to see that. There's even some more soundings here that show even heavier, but this the sounding displays it perfectly. This is kind of the idea where that band sets up, and there could be a couple of bands actually too, one further into the interior, and then as you start seeing it shift east, you'll see that band, another intense band set up across, maybe New York City, Long Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and that will go all the way up into New Hampshire and Maine. So that's kind of the general breakdown here of what's causing, why we're seeing what's happening here potentially unfold, and that's going to allow for not only plowable snow but maybe double-digit snowfall totals. So I don't know if you have anything to add there, Gerald. Gerald, maybe a question or a comment or something. What do you got?
Yeah. Well, first of all, while I go ahead and read some of these chats and answer some of them, anyone who is in the Northeast and has questions, go ahead and ask them. We're going to get to snowfall totals in just a second, but if you have questions up to this point, let me know. Also, I will very quickly once again do the classic thing that I love to do, which is this one right here. So if you haven't already and you're just now joining the stream, go ahead, like the stream, subscribe to my channel and Brady's channel, which is linked in the description of this. So you can go ahead and do that now and then hit that bell for the latest notifications on both of us. Obviously, you can tell he knows what he's talking about. He's got some great content, and we're trying to get him to 1,000 subs. So definitely go help him out there. But a couple questions we had, which I will go ahead and find. Also, while I'm answering some of these, let me go back and let everyone kind of stare at the sounding for a little bit. All right, we had somebody wanted me to shout out somebody. Let me see if I can find it
Hey,
again.
Gerald, actually, I saw a question too, if you don't mind me answering it.
Yeah, go for it. Go for
Yeah,
it.
I saw someone say, "Will this be a blizzard in Massachusetts?" It will likely not be a blizzard, although maybe there could be some stronger wind gusts along the Cape and the Cape and Islands, maybe some 40+ mile per hour gusts. Wind gusts will probably be more in the 20 to 35 mile per hour range. So you could maybe get close at some point, but likely not a blizzard to be concerned with this storm.
Okay, awesome. Jean had a question. She said, I work in an elementary school just south of DC. Can you give your school delay cancellation forecast? Do we think there'll be any cancellations for Monday that far south?
They're very.
I'll let you go.
Sorry, I thought you were asking me, sorry. Yeah, it's possible, it's possible. I would say there's gonna be a little bit less snow towards the DC, but as we know, the snow removal process in DC is, not as effective as, New York City, Boston, and, points northward. So, it really depends on the cleanup process, and if you overperform, say, if you were able to get 4, 5, 6 inches in DC, then you would definitely have a shot to see some, delays or cancellations. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, my man.
No, I completely agree. Also, I'll go ahead and throw this in here really quickly. Everyone asking about people like spamming the chat and all. I am new to having a stream with this many people, so if there are people spamming, I'll try my best to do it. I guess I should look into moderators at some point during these active patterns, but I will try to keep up with it. So I apologize about that. Let's go back and see. There were a couple other questions we had. I'm going to hold off on the questions for the South right now. We'll get there in a second, guys. I know I got plenty of people watching from the South that want to know about that storm. We're going to get there. Hang tight. Let's see. I just want to use my snowblower normally, already buried where I live, basically a dusting in Connecticut. And I'll go ahead and say I have had so many comments from Connecticut with people that are down in the dumps about this winter so far. I think this storm is really going to be good for you. I think a lot of Connecticut's going to get some good snow. If you want to add on that, Brady.
Yes, and also, Monday, I believe, is Martin Luther King Day as well, so I don't think
Oh
there
yeah,
will
so
be
school should be
school
closed anyway. Yeah.
regardless, so we did miss out on that, but sorry, what were you saying? Ask your question again about, Connecticut?
Yeah, just somebody was talking about how they haven't really gotten much snow this winter in Connecticut. I
Mhm.
wanted to know if you wanted to throw something about that, just the winter in general so far. What has it been like, kind of for different portions of the Northeast? Because obviously I don't live up there, so I get the
Yeah.
comments, I read them, but I haven't had many people, or I guess I
Yeah.
just can't say for myself.
So, I'm a little bit, some people we've had, some people would say a little bit of a snow hole here this winter so far, and I think some of it's carryover because there hasn't been a ton of snow in the Northeast last couple winters, but um, we had a decent start to December actually. Northern Connecticut actually got a pretty good storm in early December, December 5th, if anybody remembers that. So it kind of worked out pretty well for that, and there hasn't been a ton since. We've had a couple light snow events. But what's happened here is cold air has been so prevalent and we have had a lack of Atlantic ridging, so high pressure in the Atlantic. There's been a lack of during the beginning of this pattern, and that's really made it difficult to be able to get storms to ride up the coast versus kind of move out towards the mid-Atlantic, and that's why we saw the mid-Atlantic cash in, and they're able to get 5, 10 plus inches of snow in the DC area in Delmarva. And so now what we have that Atlantic ridging, so now we have an opportunity for more storms to ride up the coast, but that Arctic air is still really pressing. So that's why you're going to see the South here have an opportunity for snow as well. Not often that you're moving 2 days apart, and we're talking about Mid Atlantic to New England snowstorm, and 2 days later we're talking about a southern snowstorm. It's kind of a very very loaded pattern here.
Yeah, totally. All right, so here was a comment I saw. Please say hi to Abigail, my 6-year-old who watches every broadcast. Abigail in Middle Georgia. She is waiting for snow excitedly. Well, hello, Abigail. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you get a snow day. You might get a couple snow days out of it. We'll hope for you for sure. All right, and then we had how's Dothan, Alabama, looking for snow? Just since that's a super chat, I'll go ahead and answer that now. Dothan, Alabama, great question. And let me remind myself where in Alabama Dothan is. I know the city, I just in my head cannot fully put it on a map. Dothan, for anybody who doesn't know, is way down near Florida. I think you'll definitely get snow and/or sleet in Dothan. How much? If I had to give a number, I'd say 1 to 3 inches right now. Looks like the most likely scenario. Then let's see. Keep up the hard work. Appreciate that, Scott. Definitely, we will keep up the hard work. It has been a very tiring January so far. There have been many days with 2 videos and a live stream. And then, kind of side note, so we had the whole crazy start to the month. We did like 2 storms. We did the big Ohio Valley storm, which even got DC and other portions of the Mid Atlantic. Then we did the Southern snowstorm / icy mess last week. And then I went to New Orleans, got sick in New Orleans. I had one hell of a head cold or something. And then I got back here, and now we're tracking another storm. So, and classes started. It's been an exhausting January. So, hard work for sure, but you work hard now, and I'll try to play in the spring by storm chasing a little bit when the weather is still active, but probably not quite as crazy as it is right now. So, all right,
Yeah,
let's go ahead and
man.
get back to
Go
things.
show Gerald some love, man. Go show he's working hard right now. You go show him some love. Hit the subscribe
Yeah,
button,
it's
man. Come on.
it's definitely been a stretch for sure. Okay, so let's time out the storm too, because we haven't timed out. We've looked at soundings and all that, but I definitely want to give people kind of a time scale on this. So I'll go ahead and lead this really quickly, and then you can just jump in and add what you want in
And
terms
we had
of
a
the
super
specifics.
chat.
But
We had a super chat too, if you
oh,
wanted to
did we?
bring
Okay,
that up.
let's see.
Yeah.
Is it the thunder snow one?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, let's see here. We've got any thunder snow in Metro West Boston. I'll throw that right to you, Brady, because that's your specialty.
Thunder snow is possible, I will say. I'm not guaranteeing it, but it's definitely possible because think about, just like in the severe weather season, right? It's that thermal clash, above the atmosphere is what helps create severe thunderstorms and thunderstorms in that same process. It different obviously for the winter time, but we're going to see that potential because it's going to be a pretty strong band that sets up and heavy banding in general likely. And it's going to be in and out fast. So there's definitely going to be an opportunity potentially for thunder snow. I wouldn't guarantee it, but it's definitely possible for Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York, Long Island, New Jersey, PA. Definitely possible.
Awesome. And then thank you so much for the $10 super chat on top of that, Scott. And he just says college. Yeah, college is it's college for
Yep.
sure.
Thank you,
We're working through it. Both of us are working through it. But okay, so let's time out the storm a little bit. I agree with the thunder snow thing, by the way. Obviously, you were right on the money with that one. So we'll go ahead and move the map ahead. We did not talk a lot about Kentucky, West Virginia, and areas like that, but you're going to get some snow too out of this. This is Sunday late in the morning, about 10 a.m. We've got winter weather advisories and stuff down there. And I forgot to pull up the warnings map, but we can do that at some point if we need to. But we've already got a big stretch of winter weather advisories, winter storm warnings all through this area, including back down into Kentucky where we have the advisories. Areas like Pikeville are going to get a couple of inches out of this. But the real fun begins right around this time frame. This is, I think, right around noon. I'm an Eagles fan, if you don't know, and let me tell you, it's going to be rocking and rolling at the Link tomorrow afternoon. It's going to be the first snow game we've had a while in Philly, and couldn't come at a better time right whenever it's in the playoffs. Super excited for that. All my Eagles fans in the chat, let me know. I know you're in there. You comment on all the videos. So go Birds. That'll be fun, but going to be what I like to say puking snow probably in Philly during the game. And you can see that right into here. Brady talked about that upper level support, and this is right around the time it's going to move in. This is about 4 or 5 p.m. You see that heavy band of snow. Now, per usual, the question is going to be, where's the rain snow line? And I'd actually love to get your kind of thought on this, Brady. So I'll go ahead and you can see where it is on the HER here, but go ahead and tell me what you think and where you think it's going to set up, because that's always a question I think is so difficult to answer, especially up in your neck of the woods here in the Northeast. It's a nightmare to forecast. So go ahead and I'll let you give your take on that.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'm a Patriots fan, so I will not be supporting the Eagles on
Poor guy,
Sunday.
poor
But
guy.
so I got Drake May though, so we'll be okay. But yeah, it's man the rain snow line. It's always man, it's always it can be freaking tough to get to nail that rain snow line. It can really be challenging, especially such a tight corridor. There's so many people living in such a small area that it can be really challenging. I think that with this storm, over the course of today, based on guidance a little bit and based on my forecast, I think the rain snow line maybe won't be as much of a concern as we were seeing yesterday. So I had someone ask Central Jersey totals. Central Jersey will be very close. That's one of those places right by Philly, pretty close. Central Jersey will be very close, for example. And I think if you do start to mix, if you do mix, I think you finish as snow. So, for example, if you live on Long Island, New York City, maybe Connecticut, Southern Connecticut, Rhode Island, and then southeastern Mass potentially. I think that the mix line could end up being close to Boston potentially. Some people could start as rain potentially in southeastern Mass, as you see the herd depict there. But I think that mixing concerns are maybe not quite as prominent with the storm as we maybe thought maybe yesterday. But somewhere along in that New York City, Long Island, into southern Connecticut, we're looking at that, and what you'll see is that rain snow line will actually play out. And if you can play that loop, Gerald, and kind of play it through just a
Yeah.
little bit, um, and you'll see it will move north, and then it will start to pull out east. That rain snow line you can see, so that everybody finishes as snow likely. So it's a little bit tricky to say, how long you'll be mixing for. Is just it can be real challenging. But I think you finish, especially Long Island, New York City, and you'll finish as probably heavy snow too. So if you do mix, you get to finish probably, especially Long Island, New York City, North Jersey into Connecticut, Hudson Valley. Hudson Valley probably won't worry about mixing as much, but you will finish as some pretty moderate to heavy snow, regardless of the mixing concerns with the line.
Yeah, I think that's great. I couldn't agree more. I definitely think, um, like you said, even if they kind of start with some mixing problems, I think everyone ends with snow. So that's definitely good news. So we've got about
Yeah.
700 people in here right now. So just want to say thanks to everybody. And I will
Yeah.
once again do this shameless plug. If you haven't already, like the stream, subscribe to the channel, my channel and Brady's channel. Again, it is linked right below in the description. So go check out his page. He's also big on Twitter. I have his Twitter down there, or his X. Also follow me on Twitter and X. I always forget to say that in my videos. But trying to grow the Twitter some and try to keep it up on pace with the YouTube at least a little bit. Probably not going to perform quite as well, but that's okay. So there we go. They got that out. Okay, so that's the storm. That's kind of the timing. Well, it moves up into Massachusetts and all. This is overnight. It'll be an overnight storm probably for Boston, into New Hampshire, Vermont, and then up into the down east areas of Maine by the way overnight Sunday into Monday. And then we're waking up and we're really done. So it's going to be a potent one, but it's going to be a quick hitter. It's not going to be one of these entire 24, 36-hour snowstorms. But I tell you, if we had the kinematics like we do with this and the dynamics, plus it being a long duration snowstorm, we could have some huge totals. In fact, we're already expecting big totals. So let's start down south with the totals, because like I said, areas of Kentucky, West Virginia, don't want to forget about you. If there's anyone watching from there, let us know in the chat for sure. We are expecting snow down this way. So let's take a look at it. Totals into eastern Kentucky, we're talking 2 to 4 inches. Like I said, that Pikeville area, don't be surprised to see some good snow tomorrow afternoon and evening. Same story for the mountains of West Virginia. We're talking a half a foot or so. That's an area that's lucked out big time this winter as well. It has been very snowy for you folks out that way. And then also the mountains of North Carolina, Beech Mountain, Boone, all the way back down into the Smokies, Roan Mountain, Tennessee, going to get some good northwest flow out of this. Now, this is not the storm for the Carolinas. So you're looking on this map, you're saying, where's the snow? This is not your storm. This is for our friends in the Northeast who are going to get pummeled pretty good by this one. And speaking of that, let's move it up there and let's answer this super chat, because we have a $10 from Rob Smith. He says, what will the road conditions be like in South Louisiana Wednesday? Rob, it's going to be a mess. It's going to just be a mess. I'll tell you right now. MESS mess. It's going to be bad, especially right along that I-10 corridor. Now, it could be sleet, it could be snow, it could be a mix of both. But you will know probably better than anybody if you're from that area. You're not equipped for this thing. You can handle hurricanes maybe, but you don't really need a snowplow for a hurricane. I've made this joke plenty of times. The alligators are going to have the snow falling on them, and the roads as well. And it's going to be one of those things that the salt and the brine's only going to do so much. And we're about to get to Louisiana in a second and get to the in-depth forecast in the very nitty-gritty, just like we did for the Northeast, but definitely expecting big-time road impacts down there in those parishes along the I-10 corridor. Did you want to add anything to that, or just anything so far on that, Brady?
No, yeah, that you covered it great, Gerald. You're fantastic at this, as you know.
I don't know if I know, but I do appreciate that. All
You're
right.
great, Gerald. Come on.
I'm okay sometimes, every now and then, every now and then. All right, so what I'm showing you now is the snowfall forecast from the National Weather Service. So this is not a model, this is straight from the experts at the NWS. And it does paint a tricky forecast for the I-95 if you live right on the interstate, especially back down towards areas like Philly, northern Delaware, back into the Baltimore and DC area. I think DC, Baltimore, it's going to be about a 2 to 3 inch event. Philly, that's a tougher forecast. I think there's a boom scenario here. The NWS is about 3 or 4 inches. It would not take much in my mind, and I'll let you add to this in a second. It would not take much in my mind for that to go up significantly closer to half a foot. You get that little deformation band kind of set up on the back end, and those snow ratios are going to absolutely be ripping for a couple hours. I think it could be one of those surprise events. Eagles fans might remember the infamous LaShawn McCoy game. I think that was only forecasted to be a small event and ended up being about half a foot, I think 7 or 8 inches of snow. This could be something like that too, I think. Did you want to kind of add for those southern cities on the I-95? Then we'll move up the coast in a second.
Yeah, actually, if you don't mind showing 700 millibar, I can talk about exactly what you're talking about with this, just briefly, if you don't mind.
Yeah. No,
Um,
let me go back and pull it up.
yeah, and if you pull up 700 millibars, the key thing in Philly is it's how early does this band start getting going here. If it gets going earlier, and especially further east, if we see it stronger and further east, which may be difficult to do, if it is stronger, there's a better chance it may be a little bit further west, which might delay, which could allow that sleet line to creep a little bit. But the earlier that gets going, potentially, the longer the bigger the totals could be, and the heavier the snow right away. So for places in Maryland, Jersey, Philly, into North Jersey, some of those places, it will really depend on how quickly some of that heavier banding that can get going. And you can see it here on 700 that depicted that showing that you're able to definitely get into some of that heavier banding towards the ending of the storm.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. And not to put you on the spot, but I want you to give a little. If you had to give a total for Philly, what would you put?
Oh man, oof.
I
Um,
know, on the spot,
I
on the
would
spot.
I would say I'll put it like this. I'll say probably a floor of probably I would give like 2 to 4 in Philly, and I would lean 3 to 6, 3 to 7 in a boom scenario of like 6 to 9 in Philly.
Yeah,
I would phrase it like that.
I agree. I couldn't really add any more to that. I think that's great. Okay, so back to the snow map. Let's talk about areas a little bit further north. Now it's kind of Philly, Boston, or excuse me, Philly, Baltimore, and DC, that kind of area. Now, what about New York City and Boston? I got plenty of folks watching there, I'm sure. Another thing, it's going to be kind of close with that rain snow line or just that mixing line in general. One area I am kind of really excited to see the totals out of is what I have drawn right here: Northern Jersey, up into the Hudson Valley, into Western Connecticut, Western Mass, and right into this area. I think if there's somebody that pulls out kind of a miracle double digit snow, maybe even getting near that foot mark, I think it comes in here. And I'll let you add on that if you have somewhere that you think you would kind of throw that chance of a foot mark, if you think that's even a possibility out of the storm. If you want to talk about that for a little bit.
I do think that's a possibility. You actually almost circled my home there for a second there. I live in Central Mass for those that don't know. So, right, anybody that knows the Worcester area, about 45 minutes west of Boston. That's where I reside, my time currently. But yeah, that area is probably close to the sweet spot. I would add that, and also potentially another local sweet spot could be up central northern Mass into southern New Hampshire and Maine. That could be, a couple of sweet spots there where definitely 6 to 12 plus inches is very much in play. And it'll really depend on, like I talked about, how strong can we really see this storm get? And we talked about that where that boundary sets up earlier. If this storm's able to take in more moisture along the boundary, then we really could see significantly higher totals due to the thermodynamics at play. This is like you said, Gerald, earlier. If we had a little bit longer time, we'd be talking about an all-out blockbuster right now. And we just don't. It's going to be moving so quickly that that time is not going to allow for maybe those obviously like those big 2 foot totals to happen. But there could be some spots of 12 plus inches possibly. But a general area of 4 to 8, 6 to 12 ish is probably more likely. And the ratios too in the interior up towards Northeast PA, Northern Jersey, Hudson Valley, into the Catskills of New York and Western Mass, especially into Southern Vermont, across New England. Those ratios are going to be pretty good, meaning very fluffy snow that's going to be able to accumulate very fast for people that live in that area. So, and then a little bit closer to the rain snow line, maybe a wetter snow, but like we showed with the sounding, that your flakes will be very fat. So you'll have those big fatties that fall out of the sky, and you're going to be able to get some good accumulating snow still. Just maybe not quite. It's not maybe able to accumulate quite as fast, even if you don't get as heavy snow out towards upstate New York and the tri-state area into northern Jersey and northeastern PA as well. So even in Vermont, obviously too, if you don't get higher, significant banding, you can still maybe get just as much because you're going to be able to accumulate that snow so quickly because of how cold it's going to be in the column of the atmosphere.
Yeah, I agree. That's good. For sure. So yeah, pretty big totals. Now I'll put you in the same spot. You want to give your kind of range for New York City and Boston as well? I know we kind of just talked about all that, but just for the folks living there.
Yeah, no pressure. 20 million people, huh? Just make the
Yeah, right. Yeah, I
just
know,
make the
right?
snow
Don't worry, only about
count.
700 of them are watching. So
Yeah, I know. Fantastic. It's not who watches now, it's who watches after. I gotta get I
yeah,
gotta get
that's
the
true.
comment
That's
out
true.
there. But yeah, it's New York City's probably maybe not too different from Philly. I would lean maybe more of a 4 to 8 in New York City though, and you have a little bit higher of a ceiling. I would say, probably a floor of about 2 to 4 in New York City. I would say about I would forecast maybe closer to 4 to 8, and then you have a boom scenario in New York City of maybe 8 to 10 plus, and that's probably your boom scenario with the setup. Even though the NWS is pretty close, I believe they might have put winter storm warnings out for New York City. You'd have to double check for me, but
Oh, actually, let's
They,
pull it up right now because I meant to pull that up, and
yeah,
that
I
is
think
something I think that's pretty
I'm not
important.
sure if they did, but they're kind of alluding to that. Winter
Looks like
weather,
a advisory for the city is what it looks like right
yeah,
now.
borderline. So they have them just missing the winter storm warning, but that potential still for 3 to 6, 4 to 8 inches is still present for New York City, I think.
Yeah, definitely for
Boston,
sure.
or sorry, Boston too. Boston's a little bit tricky because you might start maybe as a little. You could mix a little bit, but you'll probably see a good amount of heavy snow in Boston as well for the most part, or maybe none potentially at all. So there's definitely an opportunity. I would say Boston maybe more 4 to 8, 5 to 10 in Boston. A little bit more of a general with a probably a floor of 3 to 6 in Boston, and then a boom scenario in Boston would maybe be maybe 10, 12 plus inches of snow in Boston as kind of a boom scenario. So as a little bit, you noticed if we went from Philly to New York City to Boston, you noticed along those that I-95 corridor, the further northeast we went, the higher the ceiling and the higher the floor we saw with the snow totals. And that'll probably be the case.
I think you can see that with this model. This is the wrap. You can see kind of that boom scenario where the storm's really cranking up as it's pulling away, and you can see these higher totals on this model of that half a foot to a 10-inch range from kind of New York City to Boston. Again, this would be the boom scenario, not so much the expected scenario. I think the wrap here shows that pretty well. So,
Yeah,
all right,
Gerald,
folks.
if I
Well, that
can I add one last thing, Gerald, if you don't
yeah,
mind.
go for it. Go for it. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
so a lot of things too. I know a lot of people love to look at the snowfall maps. This is a little bit less analysis, more with the snowfall maps. Don't always get too glued to some of these, right? We just like to show them because they're very easy for you guys to understand, just like the general idea, and that's great. But these won't aren't the perfect for depicting, if it shows like 9.5 on the model and you get, 7.8 or like 11.8 in your backyard, it wasn't necessarily the snowfall map being so bad. It's just a general idea, kind of. Oftentimes, the snowfall maps, aren't going to be perfectly accurate and always depict, some of those higher totals or sometimes even lower totals that happen. So, just for context, maybe when you see some of these snowfall maps, or if you look, on your own potentially. That's for the
Yeah,
South too, as well.
right, absolutely. That's very important across the board. Like you said, we show the maps because they're easy, they're simple, and it's easy to explain. But meteorologically speaking, there's a lot more to it than just that. Okay, now let's move to the south. We got people all over the place asking about it, and rightfully so because we've been talking about it for basically a week straight and won't shut up. So it's going to be a big one for sure. I think. Um, this map is the winter storm outlook from the Weather Prediction Center, and I think doing a pretty good job here of showing the general kind of chance that this system has to I guess just perform. Sorry, I'm reading something and talking at the same time, so I'm derailing here. But you can see this map again. It shows where we have the highest likelihood of reaching winter storm criteria, and a couple places to note: Louisiana, most of the state in it, southern Mississippi, southern Alabama, and then a corridor from Atlanta to Macon, Augusta, Columbia, South Carolina, Raleigh, the Outer Banks, Myrtle Beach, and then even tries to clip sections of the kind of southern sections here of Virginia, southeastern Virginia, Newport News, Virginia Beach, areas like that, trying to get picked up here in this as well. So definitely it's shaping up to be a pretty big storm to the point that I think a lot of folks are really going to feel it here in this area. Brady, do you want to talk a little bit just about synoptically what you think the important things are going to be here while I kind of check on something really quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. You have five. You mind going to 500 millibar?
Yeah, of course, I can do
Again,
that.
you
This
can
is 500
play that.
millibar. Yeah, let me refresh the page. It's running a little slow here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sorry, folks. A lot of internet being used for a lot of different things right now. So we'll move this ahead. Where would you like me to stop it? Like here, where the trough is digging, or
Oh, right there is actually right about perfect. One more frame, maybe.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
right
perfect.
there. Okay, cool.
So, yeah, synoptically for the South, the general setup here, what we have at 500 millibars, like we talked about, again, those upper levels of the atmosphere, this is where we look, the upper level energy. This is where the magic happens for storm tracks. So when you look at that there, you'll notice that northern piece at the top of the screen there is your polar vortex up there, right? That's part of your polar vortex. It's another lobe of this stretching event that we're talking about. So that comes down from Canada, right, directly down, and then you see that vort there, that piece there across Arizona, New Mexico. The big question here is if we see that vort get further out in front, that will allow the system, and we see the polar vortex piece back up a little bit further west. That will allow that southern piece of upper level energy to get out in front more, and that would allow for bigger totals and heavier totals, but also would shift totals further west potentially to allow maybe places in southeastern Tennessee, western Carolinas, North Georgia, northern Alabama, northern Mississippi. That would allow for heavier totals there potentially. So it would maybe shift some of those totals from the south, the deep, deep south towards the Gulf Coast. It would maybe shift some of those a little bit higher up. If we see that vort lag behind close to what we have now, and that's kind of what you've seen on models on some of these trends today, is if that polar vortex and that piece there, that lobe of, we call it vorticity, but it's just upper level energy. If it slides further east and that upper level, that southern branch of piece of upper level energy gets left behind in Arizona and New Mexico, then what happens is it lags out a little bit, in that boundary we see set up along the Gulf Coast sets up further south, and then it focuses those heavier totals for, obviously southern Texas into southern Louisiana, southern Mississippi, southern Alabama for whoever was in Dothan, Alabama earlier, somewhere like that. Florida, southern Georgia, like Valdosta, Georgia, for example. Place in southern southeastern Carolina, and that storm track event eventually, if you play it out, Gerald, it does start moving up to the coast, off the coast, and you'll see that track start to move here, and you see it start to move up the coast. If it's further amplified, then it actually not only turns it to a southern storm, but it also allows the mid-Atlantic and maybe even the Northeast to get involved if you saw some more drastic changes. But the primary focus of the heavier totals here will be in the southern US. So if you saw a cleaner phase potentially, if you were amplify this more, you would see further west places in the south, again, like northern Georgia, northern Alabama, Mississippi, uh, Western Carolinas. You would see those places be able to get into some of the heavier snowfall totals, versus places further southeast, like Myrtle Beach, all along the Carolina coast, and places, all outer OBX potentially as well. Maybe has some snow potential with this. If you saw that kind of get dragged out and those pieces unable to amplify as quickly. So that kind of, it's a unique setup here. You have deep, deep Arctic cold air that's digging very far south, and you're going to be able to tap into moisture that comes up actually from the Caribbean, from the deep tropics, and you're going to be able to pull into that, and you're going to create a very intense, again, thermal gradient, just like this whole pattern we've been talking about. The same thing for the Northeast here. That same idea sets up here for the South, and you create intense thermodynamics that's going to allow, it's not just going to be a light moderate snow, like there's a good chance for heavier snow banding to set up. It's still too early to say specifically. I think you would agree with that probably, Gerald, where that sets up, but some of those totals are still a little bit tricky. But man, there's some real potential for, like, in a historic southern storm here, and kind of let you take it from here where you want to go from here potentially.
Yeah, so I agree with everything you said. Now, a couple questions here we'll answer too real quickly before I start yapping too much. Let me make sure I am caught up at the right place. Yeah, so Eric Pearson says, hello again, Gerald, watching from Atlanta. How does it look for snow in my area, and will Philly have snow for the game tomorrow? Philly, yes, absolutely snow for the game. Probably, I would say during the entire game. Do you agree? I would say all 4 hours of the game
Probably
or so.
there's a pretty good
Yeah,
chance. Yeah, turn the
yeah.
most of the game. It'll be pretty heavy snow too, not just light potentially.
Yeah, it could be one of those things where the camera crew is kind of just gonna have to tell you what's happening on the field at times if we get those heavy
Yeah,
rains.
like the
Also,
Cleveland game earlier. Yeah, you remember that one
yeah,
earlier this year? Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Those are the best games to watch for sure, like by a mile.
Oh, yeah.
The weather games, maybe I'm biased a little bit, but the weather games are
No,
always
it's not
kind of
just
fun
you.
to.
It's me too, man. I love it. Anytime it's a snow game, oh, I gotta turn it on. I don't know about you guys in
Right.
chat, but man, anytime there's a snow game, I'm like, oh man, this is prime. This is what football's about. Hardcore, hard nosed football, man. Just that's exactly what it's about, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, it will be an absolute blast to watch. Obviously, as an Eagles fan, but I think just for football fans in general, we're going to kind of get blessed with that one, and it will kind of be interesting to see how the. I've heard some things from some friends of mine who do some sports betting, kind of how they think it'll go with what the game will do. But interesting
Stay
stuff
away
there.
from the lines. So, yeah, stay away.
Yeah, for
Anytime you
sure. Oh, that's funny. Wes says, "Do you
oh,
have any job offers yet?" Also, oh my God, you're right. Yeah, we'll get that in a second. Um, sorry, you heard the audible ooh. Wes, do I have any
good
job
job.
offers yet? Yes
Good
and
job.
yes and no. Yeah, I know it's like an asteroid. Yes and no,
The
Wes.
ghost
So I
of you.
graduate in a year. Sorry, I'm derailed now. Uh, let me lock in, Wes, and then answer your question. Do I have any job offers yet? Kind of yes and no, a little bit. The simple answer is no. I've not had any contracts sent my way, but I don't graduate for a year. But I've had plenty of people reach out with interests for me to work wherever they are. And I'll go ahead and add this in case people haven't heard. The broadcast industry is kind of going through a week right now, where a certain company that I'm not going to talk about any certain company in a bad way for my own sake, but basically are laying off every local meteorologist at their stations, and that's kind of rippling through the waves right now. So the way the broadcast is and the way the broadcast is going is um, interesting and intriguing. And I'm at a point right now where I'm just going to try to enjoy being soon to be 21, enjoy college, and whenever the job time comes, it comes. But I'm having an absolute blast doing the YouTube thing right now. And who knows if a year from now happens and I walk across the stage and this is at a point where it can sustain my life, I guess, then maybe that'll be the route. I don't know. But great question. And then we'll immediately, obviously, jump to the massive super chat that just popped up. First of all, thank you so much, Kent. That is incredible. That is easily
Shout
the
out
the
Ken Adams.
biggest.
Shout out Ken Adams.
Yeah, I'll throw a heart on that one and all, and whatever else I could possibly do, but we'll read it here. Hey Gerald, I'm in Baton Rouge, where the drivers don't know how to drive in the snow, and the road department isn't equipped to remove the snow from the roads. This town will shut down if it snows as much as predicted. Absolutely, Kent. That will be a big problem in Baton Rouge. And I was just in New Orleans a week ago, and wasn't far from Baton Rouge. And by the way, everyone down there is so nice. I didn't know if that was like a stereotype thing, or not in like a bad way, obviously, because it's calling you nice. But there's always like a Southern hospitality thing. But while I was there, I got sick and I had to go to the pharmacy. And when I went to the pharmacy, everyone was just like smiley and wavy. And I don't know, it's just like out of all the places for people to be happy, that's kind of interesting. So thank you so much, Kent. That's incredible. Did you want to add anything about Baton Rouge? We'll spend the rest of the stream on Baton Rouge if we have to at this point. But
Oh, you should spend more time on your pharmacy visit. I think that's what the people want to hear about right now, Gerald. We want to go in
the
depth on
pharmacy
that.
visit. Well, it was actually kind of annoying because being out of town, the insurance was not working very well, and I needed to get obviously some medicine for whatever I had. It was a debacle, and the whole trip was kind of unfortunate because all my friends were out in New Orleans partying and stuff like that, and I was in a room locked away, quarantined. So it
That's
was kind of sad, but I will definitely have to go back to Baton Rouge and New Orleans at some point because it was a beautiful city. The little bit I got to go out in it was incredible. So. Yeah,
yeah.
you
I'll have
want
to
to talk a
go.
little bit about Baton Rouge and what you think?
Oh, for snow totals? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will be interesting. I'm not sure, that how much the mix line will end up coming to play, but there's definitely going to be a good shot for some historic snow, like more than several inches of snow across central Louisiana with this storm. So there's like very much, again, it's a unique setup here where you're pressing Arctic air so far down, and you're fueling moisture from the tropics here. So that's why you don't need some big trough to dig down and amplify so much here. You just get that short wave. You get that wave right out in front there of that Arctic air, and you're going to create some magic to happen for that area. And so I think there's definitely a good shot for some accumulating snow, and what we would call up here in the Northeast plowable snow. For sure. I don't know how the southern standards work as much down there, but definitely to cause a mess. I'm sure it'll probably be shut down for a lot, of that southern corridor down there by the Gulf Coast.
And the other problem in Baton Rouge and everyone else that sees snow is this. A lot of times when we get snow in the South, it's with what we call a fleeting air mass, meaning the cold air is moving out and the moisture just kind of happens to catch it as it's moving away. And then it snows one night and then the next day it's 50 and it's gone. This is not that. This is quite the opposite. This is basically coming in with the Arctic air, now a day or two after the Arctic air gets established, but it's not going anywhere. So if you get 3 inches of snow in Baton Rouge on Tuesday, I would expect it to be there through at least Thursday, Friday, at least some of it. In fact, here in Charlotte, we had an ice storm last Friday, and it was still on the ground yesterday when I was walking around to go to classes, like in the shade. So and this has been not a cold week by any means. It's been chilly for sure, but it hasn't been Arctic, and that hung around an entire week. So especially if you get sleet to mix in, sleet does not melt nearly as easily as snow. So yeah, but that's kind of
Hey,
our
Gerald,
thoughts on
what if
Baton
you,
Rouge.
what if you show the temperature map actually display like how cold it's actually going to get after,
Oh yeah,
especially
that's a great idea.
if people are shut down after, there could be some real concern. It's probably going to get really cold um, after this. And, it's going to be cold before as well, but
Yeah, totally.
after this,
So if it's a
way more
Tuesday
likely.
storm, let's skip to Wednesday morning. This is Wednesday morning. This is the Euro model's projected lows. Baton Rouge, for example, we're talking a low of 15. I just looked it up the other day. The record low in New Orleans is in the teens. I don't think they've ever hit single digits. So, granted, this is 25 in New Orleans, so you probably won't get there with this. But either way, I mean,
Houston is
and you
almost
get
at single digits
snowpack
there.
on top of the cold. We could be talking record cold temperatures that settle in, and that on top of the snow, it's going to be a problem. And let's move it ahead. This is the next day, Wednesday afternoon. You're struggling to crack freezing even due to the mix of snowpack and that Arctic air. The next morning, it's cold again in the 20s, the 30s. We keep going, nights below freezing. And then finally, by Friday afternoon, we'll probably try to crack back into the 40s, and the roads should be better during the afternoon hours. But then you get to the night, and it's black ice again. So I would expect schools to be closed through basically all of the kind of I-10 corridor in Louisiana from when it happens on Tuesday through the week. Go ahead, plan now for e-learning week. Plan for all of that. Same thing for areas from Mississippi, Alabama, potentially coastal Carolinas, heck, coastal Carolina University, even that area through Myrtle Beach. It's going to be cold, and it's going to last that way for a while. It's not something that's just going to be out of here by the next day for sure. Did you want to add something to that?
No, I mean, I just if you slide back there, sorry, I didn't mean to overtalk over you,
Oh
but
no,
I
you're
saw
good. No, you're good.
Houston was almost single digits. If you slide that back a little bit, I was
Oh yeah, right
shocked.
here. Wow. Yeah. Look at that.
I mean, that's incredible. That's another part. I know you obviously we have a lot of more southeastern United States people here in the chat, just because Gerald, that's where you reside. But Texas
Yeah.
too. I saw a couple people ask some questions. That power grid's definitely going to get tested again for sure during this period. There's definitely got to be some concerns with that because it is going to get very, very cold. I mean, unique here where it's going to be colder actually in Southeast Texas than northern Texas. Pretty interesting if you look at that temperature map. So that power grid is definitely going to get tested. So I would very much, if you haven't start preparing already in Southeast Texas, Eastern Texas in general, even southern and central Texas as well, I would definitely start preparing now. Make sure the things you have you need for maybe, plan out your week basically, not just the day after, plan out your week because, if you learn any lessons from 2021 when the power grid was very much tested there as well, it's gonna get tested again for sure. So I don't know if you got anything else to add on that, Gerald, but Texas is definitely another spot that I'm going to be curious to see how they handle this event.
Yeah, and I think luckily this won't be as bad as 2021, so we don't mean to like
Yeah.
scare people. I know it's one of those things that's very raw. It's like when you talk about wind in Western North Carolina and flooding, you automatically, you get shell shocked from Helene. Same thing with Texas, but winter weather. It won't be that bad, I don't think, but this, like you said, will be one of those things you got to prepare a couple days out for. If it's a Tuesday storm, go ahead and expect to not be able to leave the house till Friday to play it safe. Go ahead and have the blankets and all the things that you might need. Now, obviously, it's one of those things. It's not as bad as maybe back into the panhandle of Texas that we had back in 2021. But for Houston standards, I mean, lows in the teens is crazy. Like, that's just not something you see very often. Isolated spots in here cracking nearly 10 degrees It's not something you see very often. So yeah, go ahead and prepare for that. Absolutely. Now we've talked about the upper levels a little bit. Let's go ahead and talk about. Oh, we had a couple other super chats, by the way. Let me go back to those before I forget. Make sure I'm caught up here. Someone says, Eric says, so what about Atlanta? Atlanta, we're talking about right now. So stay tuned, Eric. That's what this map is on. So we're going to talk about you. Don't worry. Then we had Eileen with a thank you sticker, I think is what we call those. I don't know. I'm not a professional streamer, but thank you so much, Eileen. And then Brandon says, this is a question I can answer. How is the meteorology program at UNC Charlotte? I live in Charlotte and plan on transferring there. It is amazing. I love it. I actually just gave somebody a tour of campus the other day who is coming here in the fall. They loved it. It's one of those things, I think you just walk on campus, you kind of fall in love. And it's one of those newer campuses in North Carolina. We're only founded in like the 1940s compared to Duke, who's been here since like the 1700s or 1600s or something like that, some crazy year. I don't know how old, but yeah, it's a newer university. It's very much up and coming. It's awesome. Our department is terrific. We have incredible research, both from severe weather, climate, winter weather. We do it all. So I absolutely recommend it. And I trust me, I don't have to say that. I'm paying them a lot of money to go there, so it's I could be salty, but definitely an education I'm happy to be getting for sure. So with that said, let's go ahead and break down some model guidance. Now this is where things get crazy, folks. I'm going to show you the European, and then I'm going to show you the GFS, and then we're going to bicker about which one is right because they are absolutely different. And let me see if the 18Z Euro is on tropical yet. Not quite, but they were basically the exact same. So it's okay. We'll go with the 12Z. So we'll time it out. Here we go. Starting Tuesday morning, about 7 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Central. Here's the snow beginning in East Texas, Louisiana, Baton Rouge. Going to start seeing that snow, maybe sleet fall. Now, that's something to be monitored. The NWS, I don't know if you saw their map, Brady, but they went guns a-blazing in New Orleans. They already dropped like a forecast of 4 inches in New Orleans, which I think would shatter just about every record. They went like 4 or 5 inches up into Slidell and Opelousas and areas like that. I think I said that right, hopefully. So they went guns a-blazing. I'm going to go a little more conservative for now. I think we get snow and ice in there. I think there's going to be some mixing concerns down towards the Gulf. I think the alligators are going to deal with some sleet and snow, not pure snow. New Orleans, you'll definitely get some pure snow. You'll get some sleet in there too, I think. You get up north a little bit towards Baton Rouge, yeah, it could be more all snow, and we could get historic amounts of all snow. Maybe not number 1 all time, but I think a top 5 storm definitely, potentially a top 3 storm. And it all comes back to that bear clinic zone we talked about earlier. We talked about that instability in here. Even if the trough orientation is not perfect, and Brady talked about this well, it's kind of positively tilted a little bit. It's not this beautiful negative trough. You've got so much instability with that cold air and warm air clashing here at the beaches. We're going to get heavy rates and a lot of QPF or just precipitation to squeeze out of the storm down here into Louisiana during the day on Tuesday. And again, that's going to make the roads an absolute nightmare. And then it gets into Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, potentially upstate of South Carolina. And this is also something Brady was talking about, is how does this merge? Can we get this storm a little bit further up north? Friends and all back into upstate South Carolina. Right now, I think it'll snow. How much snow? That is a huge question. It could be the difference from a dusting to a couple of inches that also shuts down your cities for a couple of days. It's the very fine details in the upper levels that have huge impacts on what's happening at the surface. But feeling most confident on the southern side here through Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. The ensembles are locked in on that. And then the European gets this storm east and bombs, or maybe not bombs it off, absolutely actually doesn't bomb it off. It's just kind of a term we like to throw around, but definitely strengthens it a good bit here off the Carolina coast and gets a big coastal storm along the I-95. We've got snow and ice in the Florida Panhandle. We've got heavy snow in south central Georgia. We've got snow in Columbia, light snow in Charlotte, Rock Hill, heavier snow back towards Fayetteville, Lumberton, up the I-95 through Rocky Mount, and even southeast Virginia, getting some snow out of that, and then kind of pulls on out of here. So that's the European. Very quickly, let me show you the GFS, and then we'll kind of tag team this and start talking back about it. Here's the GFS. Starts the same for Louisiana and Texas. Like I said, we're confident about that. Good snowstorm there. Pretty good snowstorm through southern Mississippi, Alabama, the western Florida Panhandle, and then watch what happens in the Carolinas. Or rather, watch what doesn't happen. I mean, there's basically no storm on the GFS here once you get to South Carolina, North Carolina, and the ensembles show the exact same thing on the GFS. So it's a real battle. I'll tell you, I would be pretty surprised if the GFS is right. The GFS has a bit of a notorious track record for doing crazy things that sometimes don't pan out to be right. I think this is one of those cases, but I'll go ahead and let you talk a little bit too about just this insane differences between the global models that we're seeing. And we're only a couple days away. That's what makes it even crazier.
Yeah, you took the words actually right out of my mouth. I was gonna say the exact I was thinking as you're saying, the GFS, it does have a bit of a progressive, bias here. So one thing to note about the GFS is it likes to one of its biases, since it's a lower resolution model than the Euro, a lot of people look at those high res models. The Euro actually is a high res model, I believe. No, I not that I believe, I know it is. I believe it's 9 kilometers. I believe the Euro model, so it picks up on some of those higher resolution things better. So in the shorter term, the Euro can resolve some of that stuff better, especially as we get closer for the global models. FS has a progressive bias. So there's a chance here it could be smoothing out. It likes to smooth out the upper level energy, sometimes a little bit too much. And meaning when it does it, it stretches it out sometimes versus consolidating or properly amplifying the right dynamics enough. And so sometimes that can cause it to be sometimes weaker. And if ever hear about the northwest trend before, I'm sure you guys have it
Oh
in the
yes.
south a lot as well.
Yeah, I
Notorious.
even mentioned that in my video the other day. It's like clockwork, it feels like.
Yes, it is super. We see it all the time on the GFS here in the Northeast. We actually just saw it with this storm a day ago, so it's very prominent. And Gerald, if you slide out, you can keep it on tidbits, but if you go to the Atlantic in North Atlantic and you go to 500 height, um, this was one thing we were kind of talking about, and this is I think one thing to keep an eye on. We talked about where does that polar vortex lobe come in? This is one thing I noticed. Anybody living here in the Northeast and Mid Atlantic, where I live up here, shout out Massachusetts, we noticed the Atlantic ridging for this storm increased a lot. And I don't know, Gerald, if you can go back to this storm and show and just start previous run, keep going back, all the way to kind of where we are. Yeah, if you keep going previous run, you don't have to play it out, but just show the trend of what happened here.
Mm.
Um, it if you just keep going a lot, you'll just notice it underestimated the Atlantic Ridge a little bit, and you notice the
Go way
strengthening
back
we
into.
saw.
Sorry, everyone. I know I just made the screen go
Yeah,
crazy for a
yeah,
little bit there, but yeah, here's the
yeah.
trend on the euro.
Yeah, and we noticed it was definitely more so, especially in the medium range, and it strengthened that Atlantic ridge a decent amount. So it took some time to catch up. So anybody noticing the northwest trend that happened, a big part of that was the underestimation of the Atlantic ridging. And ridging is really difficult sometimes for models to pick up on. And what this does is if we see a stronger ridge, it's going to allow more moisture to drive up into the upper level energy, and you'll see bigger totals in a more significant storm, something more Euro-like or Canadian-like, farther westward potentially even as well if you saw some crazy shifts. If that Atlantic ridging is weaker, then what's going to happen is, and you can, advance it to the southern, the southern storm now if you want to kind of highlight that. And if it's weaker, that Atlantic ridging, then what's going to happen is it's going to prevent amplification, delay it a little bit more. And so you're going to see maybe something closer to the GFS. But even then, I'd maybe be hesitant to say it'll be that progressive. So that's kind of some insight there if you want to look for, what to look for. And if you can get some big totals, especially people further north if you want to figure out how you can do that, especially for central western Carolinas and into Georgia, north central Georgia, northern Georgia, Alabama, and you figure out you want totals away from the Gulf Coast a little bit more, and that's how you do that. If you want to keep those Gulf Coast totals, you want to keep actually what you got now, and that'd be a pretty good setup.
Yeah, that's great stuff. I couldn't have said it any better. So definitely a very interesting difference in the models, and I can tell you, as somebody who's pretty deep in the southeast weather community here. Let me see. Actually, you know what I meant to do also is pull this up. Um, Sorry, yeah, I was going to say, somebody who's kind of deep in the southeast weather community. There was a lot of kind of sadness today from some friends who looked at the GFS and kind of just lost their minds a little bit. And I get it. Like, you look at the model, and it's, what people say is anytime you turn on the local news, they say, here's a euro, here's a GFS. So the automatic assumption is it's one of the big models, it's one of the good ones. And it can be sometimes, but it's these little biases that you mentioned that make it so important. And I really think the GFS is out to lunch a little bit on this one. I would be shocked if we get the storm to just basically die out and fizzle after Louisiana. I would be shocked personally, especially like we talked about earlier, all that baroclinic instability. I think even with if you get the unfavorable kind of trough and the ridge orientation, there's so much lift that wants to happen, or I guess yeah, basically just so much lift that wants to happen with these clashing air masses. I think you'll get at least some sort of overrunning event in the Carolinas for sure. So talking snowfall totals here, we feel more confident back here into Texas and Louisiana. So that's why I'm going to show you totals here. We'll talk probabilities more in the East, where we're a little less confident. But yeah, we talked about Baton Rouge and the I-10 corridor. Check this out in the Euro ensembles. Showing a good 3 to 5 inch snow event. And I think that's pretty likely in here. Now, you get all the way down to the beaches, probably more sleet than snow, but this little corridor just north of New Orleans, right along I-10, we'll say Baton Rouge, Opelousas, areas like that, very well could be a very impressive 5 inch snow event. Would not surprise me at all. We're not quite in NWS range, on the 48-hour thing, but NWS New Orleans, the map's floating around somewhere on the internet. They went big. They basically went with this map, and this would be an absolute record breaker in this area. So, did you want to add anything on kind of the Texas, Louisiana side of things, and then we'll move east towards the Carolinas?
No, you're doing great. It's exciting, man, for these parts of the region. We talking about these totals. It's hard to fathom a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, it is crazy to even really think about. So we will. It'll be fun to see how it plays out. And the pictures, for those of you who don't know, outside of meteorology, I love photography, and just thinking about the picture possibilities with these very deep south kind of mossy areas with snow. It just makes my heart warm that some photographers are going to get an absolutely crazy shot down here. So excited for those people. Now let's move it east, and this is where the battle of the models comes in that we just talked about. These are the Euro ensembles, the chance of at least an inch of snow happening. Euro ensembles say it's guaranteed in Louisiana. We talked about that. We feel good. They say it's basically guaranteed in South Georgia, coastal South Carolina, down here into southern Alabama, and even the extreme western Florida panhandle, which, by the way, I feel like we've been kind of normalized because we've been talking about this for so long. But if I were in a coma and I were to wake up and the first model run you showed me was this, my mind would be absolutely blown that the Euro ensembles at 96 hours out are showing a certainty that Destin, Florida is going to get at least an inch of snow. Like, that's, I can't even really put into words how crazy that is. It just doesn't happen. I think the last time we did anything even close to this was 11 years ago. That was 2014. And by the way, that was one of the winners that got me into meteorology so much. You can imagine young little Gerald on his front porch getting cheated by the warm nose. It happened plenty of times that year. Don't worry. And now I'm accustomed to it. But just a crazy model right here. So you can see that high-end snow chance. Here's the GFS, the exact same time frame. This is the GEFS, I should say. So the GFS ensembles. Notice the difference? Yeah, a massive one. And it's, again, only a couple days away. The GFS says nada, you're not getting a flake, or nothing significant is happening here in southern South Carolina, back to Savannah, Charleston. Has a little bit of higher totals back into the Outer Banks maybe, and still agrees with the Louisiana stuff, but even that is lower. So you talk about crazy model differences at a short time out. Euro, GFS. Euro, GFS, just absolutely insane. And again, we kind of talked about why that is, and I think you did a great job of breaking that down and kind of the upper levels on why we're seeing some of that difference. So final thing I'll show you here map-wise, and then from here, just if you have anything that you want me to pull up, let me know, and we'll go into answering question mode. So everyone go ahead and drop your questions below. This is the Schref plumes on what it projects for snowfall. And you notice a pretty big difference here. You see how it's a lot less down into the coastal areas of Myrtle Beach, back into southern Georgia and into the Panhandle, and that band is further north, even Louisiana, like New Orleans kind of getting robbed on this, but areas north of there into central Mississippi, central Alabama, central Georgia, into the upstate, and into those areas of the central Carolinas are much higher. This is that different scenario that we talked about in the upper levels. You get a slightly different phasing of energy, and you can get a map like this instead of a map like the European showed, which is further down near the Gulf. Now, is this likely? Not so much, especially the fact that it kind of robs New Orleans and all. I would be shocked if that happens, but areas further back towards the Carolinas, this is something to watch. From Atlanta, Greenville, Spartanburg, Columbia, Charlotte, Raleigh, areas like that. This is something to watch. Did you want to go ahead and add on to that? Because you kind of talked about it a little bit in the upper levels earlier, if you want to kind of connect it to this map.
Yeah, I'll just briefly. I don't want to go over talk you too much, but it's just, yeah, I think it's definitely I think it's a good highlighting the scenario of, if we see stronger Atlantic ridging potentially, or the placement of that polar vortex, allowing a little bit more of an amplified storm. This is the start of the more the potential, that we're talking about here for some of these snowfall totals. Maybe not specifically the totals, but the swath in the region that may have to start worrying about if we see that western shift. It's definitely possible. Don't underestimate it. All the models are wrong right now. And when I say that, you may be like, "Oh, what do you mean by that?" It's like models are the tools, and we have to use them. They're not designed to be perfect right now. So it's like
Yeah.
Gerald's and I, and
One of the best sayings I've ever heard is all models are wrong, some models are useful. Like that's one
yes,
of the kind of sayings that go on in meteorology, and it couldn't be more
yeah.
accurate.
Yeah, and I think there's a kind of a conception with the public a little bit. A lot of people, and not even to anybody's fault. It's just they're there and they're awesome. The data's cool, but you look at them and they're not designed to be right. They're not designed to be forecast. It's people like Gerald and I. It's our jobs to be able to break these down and then have to make the forecast. So that's the importance of that. So there's still a lot of shifts that are at play here. I know it seems like we're close, but man, you can see some really, I'm still monitoring shifts, even though the storm's coming tomorrow here in the Northeast. So a lot of shifts can happen, even though we're getting closer to the event.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we get, like you said, closer, we're starting to get into mesoscale range. We're still really only in global model range for the southeast storm. So you see some crazy swings once you get to mesoscale range pretty often. And I expect that with the southeast storm. I think some areas right now that don't think they're going to get much could absolutely luck out. And some areas right now that maybe think they are going to get a lot might get robbed just a little bit. So Levi Vincent says, can you tell us what's going to happen in the Johnson County, North Carolina area, snow totals, etc.? So Johnson County, also known as JoCo. And by the way, I have weirdly, everyone in my friend group, it feels like, is from JoCo. And they always bicker about what part of Johnson County they're from. So the fact that I know where that is just that works out well. So JoCo is kind of not far from Raleigh. Anybody who's wondering, and again, it just happens to be a miracle that I have friends from that area, so I kind of know a little bit more. We can zoom in to, and by the way, from here on out, unless there's a map you want me to pull up, absolutely let me know, and I will. But we're going to kind of just spitball here and answer some questions. So just throw in any ideas you have or anything like that, Brady. Feel free to. Um,
No, yeah,
so
that's
if
yeah.
Yeah, so if we take a look at the European ensembles, and again, this is the one that kind of had the more boom scenario, and I think really the more just realistic scenario in general. This is the chance of at least an inch of snow. JoCo, you're probably right in that 50 to 60% range. You're luckily a little east of Raleigh. That helps you. If you're back towards the Triad, I'd be more cautious. If you're into Charlotte, I'd be a little more cautious. Greenville, Spartanburg. And by the way, when we talk about that higher end boom scenario, these little 40% chances back here into the upstate along the I-85 corridor, I mean, that's not bad. Like, that could go up very easily. You could very easily uptrend that. That would not be hard to do. JoCo, I think you're going to get snow. I really do. You asked about totals. It's hard for me to give a number right now, given just all the different possibilities. I'll just say I think you'll get snow, and I think you'll get accumulating snow, probably more than an inch. There are scenarios where you get a significant amount more than that. So, right. Are there any questions in the chat you see that are jumping out to you? Because there's a lot happening, and I'm kind of trying to read some of them and talk at the same time.
No, just a comment from someone said 42 have never seen that much snow in Houston before. It just some perspective here with the upcoming for a lot of people are have a chance to see the most snow they ever have before. That's it's I'm excited for them too. Just as a Northeast person,
Yeah.
everybody deserves to see some snow, man, at some point.
Absolutely. Could not agree more. Also, while we're answering questions, shameless plug. Go ahead, like the stream. And if you're watching this after the fact, like it anyway. Subscribe, hit the bell for the latest notifications on my channel and Brady's channel. Also, everyone, go ahead and chat and say thank you for coming on, Brady. We really appreciate it. And we're not going to leave just yet, but just so I don't forget to do that at the end. Again, his YouTube and Twitter is linked below. And you can definitely check it out there. I absolutely recommend it. We're trying to get him to 1,000 subscribers. I think he just hit 500 before the stream, so hopefully he gets at least something out of this and out of his time. So thank you for that. Okay,
Well, thank you,
cool. Now
Gerald,
back to
man.
the
It's
maps.
been, it's been a blast.
Yeah, it's been fun for sure. This has been we've been going for like an hour and almost an hour and a half, and that's pretty crazy.
Flew by.
It's been a
Yeah, it
quick
flew
hour and a
by.
half. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so Northeast Alabama. Let me do math in my head on what east is, because by the way, it has been a long day. North, never eat soggy waffles. Here we go, Northeast Alabama. That's one of those areas that you need that kind of a different orientation in the ridging and the troughing that we talked about to kind of help get the moisture north a little bit. And I'll tell you, generally speaking, in my experience, these things amplify in the mesoscale models. I think the global models are underdoing the precip shield a little bit. I think the Euro's closer. The GFS, I think, is way off. But the NAM, let's show the NAM actually, because it's way out there and it's quite a ways away. But I think it's at least showing the potential for a bigger precip shield out of this. So we move this ahead. Here's the latest NAM. You can see even upstate South Carolina, the central areas of North Carolina, trying to get some snow here. Northern Alabama, you're right on the edge. And it's going to be one of those storms where if you were flying in a plane, you could look out over the left side of your window and see bare ground. And then you look out over the right window and you see what is a couple inches of snow. It's going to be a very fine line where this sets up. Does it set up over kind of areas a little bit further inland? Does it set up along the I-20 corridor? That's going to be the question, and that's what we need to kind of find out. So anyone kind of, let me kind of draw a little area in here. Anyone right into here, let me see if I can get this drawing to work properly. Into here, this is the biggest question mark zone. Do you get snow or do you not? Everyone a little bit further down near the coast, I think you'll get some sort of winter precip. That could be snow, that could be ice. You'll get something. Areas further inland, though, it becomes a little bit of a tougher forecast. Did you want to add on to that at all?
No, it's just it is tough right now, just so early to be able to, really pin down where some of this because I really think there's some opportunity for some pretty drastic changes all the way. Just because we're depending on where that lobe comes in from the polar vortex, it could really change things drastically, and models won't be able to pick up on it until very close. So, there's a wide range of possibilities with this forecast for sure.
Yeah, totally. It's good. Okay, let's see what other questions we have here. Winston-Salem, North Carolina, that is near the Triad. That's in that circle I just drew. So everyone in there, I would love to answer your questions, but it's really just we don't know yet. It could trend up. It could kind of stay where it's at and not be much. Either way, it'll be cold. I'll tell you that in that area. So dirty snowman for Middle Georgia or a bust. Yeah, I think Middle Georgia. You'll be able to get a nice little muddy snowman, a classic Georgia snowman. What's south of
And Ger
I-20 in Alabama looking like? Go ahead. You say what you're gonna
oh,
say.
yeah, Gerald, I saw some people asking about, ice concerns. You wanna maybe, talk about that, go maybe a little bit more in depth for maybe, deeper south, as well for maybe
Yeah,
Texas,
totally.
Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia.
Yeah. So one of the best tools to use for ice is the QPF kind of freezing rain tool that the Euro uses. So I don't think it'll be nearly as big of a concern into Louisiana. Now, Houston may be some ice concerns, but I think it'll be more sleet than freezing rain. Where I am concerned about freezing rain is down here into South Georgia and the Florida Panhandle. By the way, have you ever seen a model that outputs this much ice into like Gainesville, Florida? Because I have not.
I can't remember, and maybe, but I can't remember the last time. Yeah, I mean, I just can't remember the last time in general talking about this much snow and ice down here. It's incredible. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you're in this corridor, and somebody was watching from Jacksonville earlier, I highly doubt they're still here at this point, but if anyone's from Jacksonville, this corridor from Savannah down to Jacksonville, and that's a good point. I'm glad you brought up the ice because I haven't really been talking about it much. This could be a big ice storm if the Euro is right, and that could be ice and like freezing rain ice, probably some sleet too. And another thing we need to watch is see it kind of even gets up here into Myrtle Beach, Georgetown, Murrells Inlet, into the Charleston area. Does this ruin snow totals in here? Is the big band of snow a little bit further inland? And I posted that on Twitter earlier. I kind of drew an area right in here from Columbia to Augusta, back up to Raleigh. I said that's the place to be if you want snow, pure snow without mixing concerns. And I'm going to stay by that. The models have maybe trended a little bit further south today. But again, you folks down here know with hurricanes, I remember Hurricane let's see, Florence, I think it was, a couple days prior looked like a Cat 4 at landfall, and then day of, it's a Category 1. Same thing with snow. It can change so much in a day or two, and my gut tells me this area in here will be more snow. But down near the coast, this is where we're going to have those icing concerns and potentially significant icing, I think, into southern Georgia. Anything over a tenth of an inch is basically enough to shut down anywhere in the country, but especially in the South, where we are even less equipped to deal with it. And the problem is, in places like here, you could say, all right, well, let's try to get some plows from somewhere else. Well, you can't get them from here. They're getting snow. You can't get them from here. They're getting snow. You can't get them from here. So unless you got some crews coming down from Tennessee or something, you're going to be hard pressed to find someone to help kind of up your equipment for a storm like this. So yeah, the ice will definitely be a concern. That's a very good point.
And Gerald, too, we talked about earlier how cold it's going to be after. So for people that do see snow, maybe as well with the ice, if you see both, or even just freezing rain, or even sleet as well, it's not gonna. It doesn't matter if it's ice, whether it's sleet or freezing rain. If that sticks around and that hardens and that freezes, that's some real concerns in terms of cleanup, maybe power restoration for some people that are in the freezing rain. There could definitely be some concerns with that for the southeast, especially just with how cold it's going to get after. It's unusual for this time of year even to be getting this cold in the south for even as long as we will be. So that I think is another aspect that people should make sure, again, like we talked about with Texas being making sure you have a plan other places too in the south as well, especially Georgia, Florida, Florida Panhandle. It's incredible we're talking about this right now. Yeah.
Yeah, and talk about insult to injury. This is another thing we're gonna have to start talking about the channel. I'll start talking about it after the northeast snow tomorrow. So here's our big storm the early next week. Okay, you see it. This is the Euro. Let me go to the 18Z so we have the latest data here. Um, Here it is. So that's the storm for this early next week. Then you're like, all right, good, we're done. It's just cold. Question though is, are we done? Here's another little piece of energy, and this is not far away either. This is less than a week out. This is next Thursday, Friday. Again, talk about insult to injury. We might do round 2 in the Carolinas. And this one, I think, also has potential to maybe try to ride up the coast. Obviously, way too far out there for any specifics, but and we're not done after this. January's just getting started. And by the, it's crazy. We're the 18th, and I'm saying it's just getting started. Well, it really is. I really think all the way through the end of the month, it's going to be rocking and rolling. So I was answering a question about South Alabama. I did not forget you. Yeah, so down there, I think you'll get some snow for sure south of I-20. I think even Birmingham will get some snow, but right around that Montgomery area could be a sweet spot for a good couple of inches, maybe 2 to 4 inches of snow. Something I'm watching there. So good stuff. Any impacts for Hilton Head, South Carolina? That's way down there on the beaches of South Carolina. Maybe some ice and snow kind of mixing together. I'd be surprised if you're all snow in Hilton Head. I think it'd be more of kind of a wintry mix, as we call it in meteorology. But definitely wintry impacts there for sure. And, you're equipped for hurricanes, but probably not so much for winter weather. All right, any other questions you see that are jumping out at you that you'd like to answer?
I got someone asking, you want to talk about, I got multiple people talking about Virginia Beach, southeastern Virginia. You want to mention them a little bit, maybe?
Yeah, so Virginia Beach in southeastern Virginia, it's one of those areas that, again, you're a little far north, but you're also luckily east. So I think you'll get snow out of this one. Same thing. It's this kind of corridor right here, just into even the southern Delmarva down here in this area, even up towards Elizabeth City, North Carolina. If this storm can really kind of crank up, and if we get enough of that ridging that kind of pushes the storm north a little bit, you could get lucky and get an all snow event that piles up. Again, I think somebody right now that doesn't look like a big storm, and right there doesn't look like a big storm right now, it could very much uptrend for places like that, places like the Triad, Charlotte, Atlanta, Greenville, Spartanburg, just really this whole corridor right into here is what I'm watching for a possible uptrend. And even some of the models like this one, South Jersey, Delaware, maybe you can get some light snow out of this event. Not out of the question if we get this more amped up solution like the European's been showing. If you wanted to add on to that at all, especially kind of the Jersey stuff and any sort of crazy out there northeast potential with this storm.
Yeah, no, that was a great point, actually. It was exactly what, I was kind of alluding to earlier. Yeah, those places, not only would it include more maybe, Western Carolina, Central Carolinas, and especially through Central North Carolina would get more involved in this, but this would also include, if we saw that more amp scenario, Southeastern Virginia, Delmarva, and maybe even places of the Northeast, if we really went crazy here. There could actually be some significant potential with this, and it would potentially totals to the shift that you see now compared to the forecast. It could be very drastic. Like if you're forecasted maybe 1 to 3, like it could be more than a half a foot possibly for some of these places. Like there could be a drastic forecast change here, depending on. It's really hard to tell how the evolution because a lot of our upper level energy that's coming is still in the North Pole, and it's going to shoot down very fast. So it's just so tricky to really pin down how exactly this is going to play out. So we definitely can't pin down anything quite yet. As it's that we get paid to be wrong. Yes, we do. We we embrace it, but
And we love it.
we do. We love it. But man, you just kind of embrace it and go for the wild ride that sometimes these models take you on. Yeah.
Yeah, and like even folks in Texas will tell you just the storm a week and a half ago now, or I guess about a week ago, places like Abilene and all were forced or forecasted basically nothing, maybe an inch or two. Some folks out there got half a foot, so it can literally happen like morning of the storm. You can go from 0 to 100 really quickly, and that's just kind of the limitations of the science. Which sounds terrible, but I also kind of like that a little bit because it makes me feel like my job security is a little bit higher in the AI age. I'm not sure even a computer could figure out our atmosphere. And by the way, I'll go on a quick tangent here. People always say, they get paid to get wrong. The models are right in front of them. Well, really, the biggest limitation we have is data collection. There's only so many balloons out there that we can launch to get this information. If we could sample every inch of the atmosphere and the ocean at every second, we wouldn't have any job. We would basically know exactly what's coming next. But when you launch a balloon in every other state only twice a day and you've got basically nothing over the oceans, that makes it tough to know exactly what's happening up there. So it kind of comes down to just, I'll be honest, comes down to a little bit of intuition as well. You kind of got to go with your gut sometimes with meteorology. Sometimes the models and all don't give you everything for sure.
Going off your point too, to add on to what you're saying, it's not just data collection, as well as also the funding we get to be able from the government and other countries to make the models better as well. We get limited resources a lot of times to be able to improve these models, so that the data they do get to be able to be more effective. So it definitely takes, you got to start developing kind of years of feel and forecast. That's why so many older meteorologists do so well, as opposed to some of the younger people like us, maybe,
Yeah, I
Gerald.
mean, we have no idea what we're doing, but no, I'm just kidding.
That's why I call myself
But
an amateur. I'm the
right. No, that's fair. Me and you both. But yeah, and another part of that, like you were saying with the data collection and all, we what's happening in Siberia, Russia right now is so important to what's going to happen here, and sometimes only a couple days down the road or a week down the road. And if there's only one balloon getting launched in one little part of this massive area of Siberia, do we really know that much about what's happening in the atmosphere out there? Probably not. So it's a lot of what we call parameterization in the models where they kind of just have to guess sometimes. So you wonder why the GFS has nothing and the Euro has something big. Both of them are guessing. They're just guessing differently on what's happening in parts of the atmosphere. So that's good. That's great. Um, Okay, cool. So I think honestly, we're gonna go ahead and tamper it down here. We went an hour and a half, almost an hour and 45. This is easily the longest live I've ever done. So I'll go ahead and remind everyone here at the end, because I think we answered all the questions and did 2 videos today. So if you have any more questions, follow us on Twitter. We're very active there. The link for both are in the description of this. Also, go ahead and like this stream, subscribe to my channel and Brady's channel. Again, also in the description of this video. We're trying to get him to 1,000 subs here. So go ahead and help him as much as you can, and hit the bell on both channels and all the fun stuff. And thank you so much for all the super chats tonight. Incredible. It was a great conversation. And thank you, Brady, for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and Gerald, I'm gonna be going live actually tonight as well on my channel. So it'll focus a lot because I have a lot of Mid-Atlantic Northeast people. So I'll be going live tonight, probably somewhere around 11:30ish typically is when I go live. And I'll be breaking down, and I like to really deep dive. So a lot of you that love the meteorology, the analysis, or just have questions and you want to know more, I'll be deep diving the storm that's upcoming tomorrow, and I'll also be talking about after. Once I'm done with that, I'll be talking about what's going to be going on after. So if any of you are curious, I will also shamelessly plug, that
Oh,
I
go
will
for it.
be live streaming tonight, and that's typically what I do more than post videos. So for those that know, I typically live stream later at night. For those that like to come in, and it's I just love this stuff with a passion. So sorry if I overtalked it sometimes, everybody, but I just really love the meteorology and the passion behind this stuff. So. I can't thank you enough for having me on, Gerald. And I appreciate everybody that subbed as well. It means, a ton. I already saw it go up. I think we added at least, about 50 subscribers just during this time. So I appreciate all of you guys so much. Really means a lot. So, and thank you, Gerald.
Yeah, of course. No, thank you so much. So yeah, definitely go check out his live tonight at 11. I will be sound asleep, so I will not be there, unfortunately. But for all you night owls, definitely go check that out. And we'll be back, or at least I'll be back tomorrow morning with another video. All right, folks, y'all have a great one. Stay safe, stay warm, think snow, and we'll see you all next time.